Thank you for joining me to talk about three great walks in Kochi and Ehime prefectures, Japan. This YouTube is split into three parts. You can access my document on the walks at bit.ly/Kochi and Ehime, or you can use this QR code. In part one, we look at highlights of our journey through Kochi and Ehime, and then set the historic tone for our walks, in particular the Bakumatsu period in mid-19th century. We then visit Yusuhara and undertake our first walk, the Tosa Salt Road. Part two looks at the town of Ozu in Ehime Prefecture and a portion of the 88 Temples pilgrimage. We also explore one of the many mini 88 Temples pilgrimage routes in Kochi. And in part three, we visit Ino-machi, famous for paper making, and we walk along the Dappan-no-michi from Kochi to Ehime. First, to highlights of our journey. Both Kochi and Ehime prefectures are sparsely populated. Kochi is the third least populated in Japan, with just 660,000 people and losing a little over 1% of that population per annum through low birth rates and exodus from the prefecture. In the Edo period, Kochi was referred to as the Tosa domain, a word we still hear frequently, and Ehime Prefecture was known as the Iyo domain. Both prefectures have rugged hinterlands with deep valleys and pristine rivers to explore. The three major rivers in Kochi are the Shimanto River in the far west of Kochi. We cross its upper reaches on the Dappan-no-michi walk. The Monobe River in the east of Kochi, its valley's ridgeline along which we walk on the old Tosa Salt Road, and the Nyodo River with its interesting submersible bridges, and clear waters, essential for paper making at Ino-machi town. We explore a mini 88 Temples pilgrimage in the upper reaches of the Nyodo River in part two. Our walk takes us on the old Tosa Salt Road, guided by delightful locals who are keen to protect the history of this once important trade route. We walk a pleasant small section of Shikoku's 88 Temples pilgrimage and explore one of the many miniature versions. Kochi contains 24 to 39, these are the temple numbers on the original pilgrimage route, and over 70 miniature 88 temples pilgrimage routes. We then walk the best parts of the Dappan-no-michi, which is Sakamoto Ryoma's escape route from Kochi. Ryoma was a samurai of high ideals who, at the end of the Edo period in the mid-19th century, was willing to risk his life for the future of a new, enlightened and stronger Japan. His escape route saw him travel from his birth home of Kochi to Yusuhara and then past Ozu, and finally by riverboat to the port of Nagahama, from where he crossed by sea to the mainland. We visit Ino-machi on the Dappan-no-michi. Ino-machi is famous for making high-quality washi paper, a process reliant on clear water from the Nyodo River. Yusuhara, where Ryoma spent his first night after escaping Kochi, is now famous for architecture by Kuma Kengo. Yusuhara is where Kuma developed his love of timber in his architecture. And we visit the small castle town of Ozu, made wealthy through Japanese wax production, which Ryoma sailed past on the Hijikawa River. Now, the easiest way to arrive in Kochi is by air, arriving at the local airport named after the city's famous son, Ryoma. An airport limousine bus takes you straight to the Kochi station. Alternatively, highway buses will take you from the Shinkansen Okayama station to Kochi over the impressive Inland Sea Bridge. This takes about 2 hours, 36 minutes on the Ryoma Express. There is no escaping Ryoma when visiting Kochi. There are many quaint hotels in Kochi dating to the 1980s bubble economy era, but I think the newest addition is probably the most comfortable and least fussy, the JR Clement Inn, which is right next to the JR station. The city has a comprehensive tram system, but is great for strolling along its rivers and castle moats and its bustling shopping malls, which include the Hirome Market, built at the base of Kochi Castle on land of the Hirome family, senior retainers to the Yamauchi feudal lords. Loved by the locals, it's a fun place for dinner, and it's where you'll probably experience your first of many katsuo tataki dishes. Katsuo tataki is Kochi's most famous cuisine. It uses bonito tuna or skipjack tuna. The fillet of fish is seared instantly in the momentary intense heat of rice straw, and in Kochi is traditionally served just with salt. Elsewhere in Japan, with condiments including garlic slices, spring onions, and ponzu sauce. Ponzu uses yuzu, citrus, famous from Kochi, mirin, rice vinegar, and soy. Katsuo, or bonito tuna, makes its way up to Japan in the spring on the warm Japan Current, which hits Kochi's Pacific coast. Famously, Kochi fishermen catch the fish on single poles, which is sustainable. The bonito return from the north on the same current in the autumn, and so the fish are captured fresh in 2 seasons off Kochi. Bonito is also dried and smoked and shaved to make katsuo bushi, which is a cornerstone ingredient of Japanese cuisine stocks. Next, the Bakumatsu period. And I introduce this as background to our walks, particularly on Ryoma's Dappan-no-michi. Now, 3 large statues greet you outside Kochi Station. They are 3 Tosa samurai who exemplify the Bakumatsu period. Bakumatsu starts with the arrival of American Commodore Matthew Perry in 1853. He demanded that Japan opened up to trade with the West, but an unequal treaty was forced on Japan, which outraged the samurai, exemplified by these 3. Ryoma stands in the middle. To his left is his swordsmanship teacher and mentor, Takeichi Hanpeita, who was founder of the Tosa Imperialism Party. To Ryoma's right is his colleague and friend, Nakaoka Shintaro, who was assassinated with Ryoma in Kyoto in 1867. They were 31 and 32 years of age, respectively. The 15th Tokugawa shogun would resign later that year, bringing the Edo period and the Bakumatsu era to an end. Thanks to Ryoma and many other like-minded shishi, or samurai of high ideals, Japan would make its first steps towards an open constitutional democracy, the beginning of the Meiji era in 1868. Ryoma advocated democracy, Japanese nationalism, return of power to the imperial court, and moderate modernization and industrialization of Japan. He helped negotiate the Sacho alliance between the powerful rivals, Choshu and Satsuma domains, who would eventually march towards Edo, demanding the resignation of the shogun. Ryoma also established the Kaientai in 1865 in Nagasaki. Kaientai is considered Japan's first modern corporation and was a trading and shipping company and private navy. Ryoma was, in fact, one of many high-minded samurai. His popularity among Japanese is really due to an 8-volume novel by Shiba Ryotaro called Ryoma ga Iku. Ryoma ga Yuku, or There Goes Ryoma. And his assassination at the young age of 31, while in his prime, ensured he took on sort of a mythical existence in the minds of the Japanese. Now, this author, Shiba Ryotaro, is a wonderful observer of Japanese and world history. He traveled and wrote extensively. His novel about Ryoma is painstakingly researched, but nevertheless, it is a work of historical fiction. And this wonderful swashbuckling tale only heightened Ryoma's reputation. And 24 million copies have sold in Japan since its first publication in 1966. Now, let's first visit Yusuhara along the Dappan-no-michi trail. Ryoma stayed his first night after walking 90 kilometers from Kochi here in Yusuhara. Ryoma stayed with a father and son, the Nasu family. Upon arrival in Yusuhara, he first prayed at the Mishima Shrine, located at the far end of town, for safety and success on his journey, remembering his escape was an act punishable by death. He crossed the Miyuki Bridge to reach the shrine and approached the shrine exactly as we do here today. He would have bowed twice, clapped twice to alert the deities, and made one simple final bow just to thank the deities for their protection. Today, the town is famous for several major Kuma Kengo design structures. Kuma's relationship with Yusuhara began in the late 1980s. A highway expansion program had slated for destruction the lovely wooden theatre in Yusuhara. It wasn't particularly old. It had been built in 1948, but it was a lovely building done in a traditional pre-war style. A local community group decided to save the structure by moving it. The group appealed to architects across the nation to add gravitas to their determination to save the building. And one of those who traveled to Yusuhara and ultimately lent his support was Kuma Kengo. Kuma was at that time an up-and-coming architect, only 1 decade into his career. Kuma claims he fell in love with timber in Yusuhara. One could say Yusuhara changed Kuma's life. He certainly has had a massive impact on Yusuhara over the following decades. After saving the theatre in 1992, Kuma returned to Yusuhara in 1994 to build a hotel called Kumo no Ue Hotel. The name was inspired by Yusuhara's nickname, the town above the clouds. The aerofoil roof looks like clouds, while the pond reminds us of the rice terraces of Yusuhara. Yusuhara cedar was used extensively in the accommodation block. However, the rooms were not well sound insulated. It's a disaster, actually. And the building was demolished in 2021, and it's currently being rebuilt, hopefully with better insulation between the accommodation rooms. In 2006, Kuma built his next Yusuhara structure, the town hall, designed for efficient disaster management after the town was badly affected by flooding. And it provides community space for the locals. On sunny days, the massive entrance doors that you see here are fully opened, making the space more welcoming. Inside, Kuma makes full use of Yusuhara cedar, building a Yusuhara-style tea house in the cultural center of the building. High-tech disaster management equipment is camouflaged in the building. The next structure was built in 2010, the Wooden Bridge Gallery. Kuma fills the gallery with dappled light. He used a forgotten wooden bridge building technique from the Edo period called the hanabashi technique. This piles trees up from both ends, and bridge girders are placed on top of them. In Yusuhara, Kuma placed all the load bearing on a central pillar, sort of like a balancing toy bridge. You might imagine a tightrope walker holding a weighted balancing pole. My photo here is at night, but in the day it's a very beautiful dappled light space. Next door, the locals built a hot spring, which is free to access if you're staying in the annex of Kuma's Hotel in town. Now, there is only one remaining hanabashi in Japan today, in Otsuki City, just over 1 hour out of Tokyo. So please consider visiting it. Hiroshige depicted the bridge in 1842 in his famous woodblock on the print on the right there. Today, the bridge is reinforced with steel, so it's quite safe. Kuma used extensive cedar in the capital Tokyo Hotel, completed in 2010. So if you're looking for accommodation in Tokyo, I can recommend this one. And of course, you must visit his Olympic Stadium, which uses wood beautifully, built for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Now, back in Yusuhara in 2010, Kuma completed a marketplace called Marché Yusuhara. It sits in the main street of Yusuhara, which had all its power poles placed underground. This occurred when a group of local women insisted that a tunnel be built to improve access to the town. The tunnel is further down this highway. The market's support pillars look like trees reaching upwards. And indeed, Kuma references traditional joinery in his work. A design which was called Jigoku Gumi, literally the hell joint, is used in the marketplace building. Accommodation is available in the marketplace building upstairs. This is the annex facility. No dinner is provided, but there are restaurants up the street. My favorite is this hearty yakiniku barbecue restaurant. Breakfasts are provided in the hotel and are served in the marketplace cafe. And finally, in 2018, the star attraction of the town, the public library, was completed by Kuma Kengo. The space is loved and well used by locals, and next door is an aged care facility, also by Kuma. It's not open to the public, understandably. So let's begin our first of 3 walks in Kochi and Ehime on the old Tosa Salt Road along the ridgeline of the Monobe River Valley east of Kochi. We will walk the best 10-kilometer section of a total of 30 kilometers from Monobe in the interior to Akaoka on the coast. The walk has been restored by the local Salt Road Preservation Society. This is the trailhead. The walk is led by members of the Preservation Society and begins with a blessing, offering fish, rice and sake to the mountain gods, asking for safety on the trail. The road has a 400-year history of transporting salt from the coast around Akaoka. Akaoka is just to the east of the mouth of the Monobe River and Kochi Ryoma Airport. Salt is still made in Tanocho, about 33 kilometers along the coast, where salt is sun-dried in hothouses. The salt was traded at a market in Akaoka, and the streetscape of Akaoka retains some of this history. Salt was traded into the interior in exchange for charcoal, mushrooms, firewood, and gumpi bark for paper making. Back on our walk, we ascend steeply from the trailhead at Monobe up onto the ridgeline. We immediately come across an old tea house, the Usugi store, which operated as a tea house until the 1940s. It was refurbished with plaster walls in 1806, an indication of the wealth accumulated along the Salt Road. The trail is well maintained with local volunteers, even cajoling members of the Self-Defense Force, the Japanese military, to assist with major construction projects such as bridges. The ridge has many thoughtful rest areas and toilets supplied by the volunteers. The walk passes the remains of many mileage markers, shrines and temples, and small kannon and jizo bodhisattva statues. Here are the remains of the Kotohiragu Shrine. It is one of 600 national sub-shrines of Kotohira. The main shrine is in Takamatsu, on the mid-slopes of Mount Zozu, literally Elephant Head Mountain, named after the mountain where Buddha preached to his 1,000 disciples in India. Affectionately known as Kompira-san, the worship of this deity was abandoned in the early Meiji period with the forced separation of Shinto and Buddhism. The deity formerly became Omononushi no Kami from Mount Miwa in Nara, but the locals stubbornly still only refer to Kompira Daigongen. Now, note the small kannon bodhisattva, the goddess of mercy statue along the roadside. It is the Tsubue Bato Kannon, or horse-headed kannon. Now, the salt and commodities were often carried by horse and ox, and so bato kannon are common along the roadside as they were protective of pack animals. They also gave us, as travellers, companionship. The Tsubue horse on the horse head kannon is less clear there on the left. You can just see the horse head above Kannon's head. A clearer example is on the right there that I've provided. In spring, walkers are delighted by the yuki mochiso, literally snow rice cakes, or snow rice cake grass. The flowers are not carnivorous. It would look like they'd snatch up flies, but they don't do that. However, they can irritate the skin if touched, so please don't touch them. Mr. Komatsu Masahiro is the young chairman, the new chairman of the Salt Road Preservation Society. He's a yuzu citrus farmer. He and his father have 700 trees. However, they're unable to harvest all the fruit because of labor shortages, and there are some uncertainties about our markets. We need to help him by buying more yuzu fruit. He also has a car detailing business in Kochi. But for me, most importantly, he is a devout practitioner of Izanagi-ryu Shinto, which I'll describe next. Now, yuzu is my absolute favorite citrus. The zest from the young, hard green fruit is used for the best Japanese cuisine soups. And juice from the mature fruit, as you see here, is used in refreshing beverages. The trees are now also grown outside of China and Japan, in Australia, New Zealand, Spain, Italy, and France. One of the many distance markers is this one, the Tsubue Choishi stone. A date on the right is 1861, the first year of imperial reign Bunkyu. And it is 8 cho, or 900 meters, to the old Kotohiragu shrine, which we just passed. We then enter the village of Shodani-ai, where most of our volunteer guide friends come from. This map is of the village in 1945, with over 60 households. Today, there are just 12 households that survive, with population decline. Now, the red dotted line is the Salt Road, and we have approached from Tsubue. And this shrine is dedicated to Ujigami, which is a local deity. It stands next to the Kumon Shrine, which is related to an ancient family who escaped here in the 12th century with the defeated great Taira warrior family. Now, the Kumon family is related to the first chairman of the Salt Road Preservation Committee, Mr. Kumon, who we'll meet shortly. And they're also related to the Kumon Method Schools, I'm sure you've heard of. We cross the river flowing through Shordaniai, and again note the immense wealth that accumulated along the Salt Road, evidenced by this magnificent brick warehouse. You just do not see such wealthy warehouses in Japan. Next, we pass the Shordaniai Mansion distance marker. Now, this stone had toppled over in the 1946 Showa Nankai earthquake. In March 2002, at the request of the landowner, 8 volunteers, led by Mr. Kumon, righted the stone. And the group then decided to walk all the way to Akaoka on the coast and re-establish the old Tosa Salt Road. And here we see retired chairman Mr. Kumon Hironobu leading a tour on the Salt Road. He tells me that the stone reminds us of our duty to revive and protect the history of our ancestors. And he also comments how not only goods, but ideas and religion were disseminated along the Salt Road. We pay our respects at the Shordaniai Bato, or horse-headed kannon, and shortly we reach Genta Slope. This is a sad story. Genta was a youngster who fell in love with a 16-year-old newly married girl, Oyuki. Now, Oyuki cheated on her husband with Genta, but they could never be together, so the two youngsters vowed to commit suicide together. Genta wanted Oyuki to be dressed in a beautiful kimono for the suicide and their entry into the next world. And so he killed and robbed the Shordaniai village store owner and his wife. Shordaniai was in an uproar the next morning, and Genta was arrested and sent to Akaoka for execution. He sang his favorite shamisen melody as he was carried across this hill in chains, hoping that Oyuki would hear his song. He was executed, but apparently Oyuki was not affected by the affair and enjoyed a long life. This is a wild boar bathing ditch dug out by the boars in the hotter months, and they cool down here. We cross Oi-Hagi Pass with spectacular views, and a continuing interest in flora. This photo was taken in summer, leopard lilies, also in summer, black swallowtail butterflies. Now, these are the old horse stables, which means our lunch stop is not too far away. Now, ox were kept in the open, but horses needed more care and were provided with stables here. Now, Mr. Kumon is waiting for us with delicious bento lunches and hot tea at the Kuromi rest hut. The amazing lunches are made by the locals and are placed in bamboo boxes cut by Mr. Kumon. Here, the current and retired chairman describe the history of the road over lunch, describing how from Monobe, the road split into 3 routes going over the Sasa Pass to the famous Iya Valley, and the Yotsuashi and Kubo passes, which were headed to Tokushima. Mr. Kumon proudly displays an original Edo period horse bell here. The walk continues for another hour after lunch, gently downwards through pleasant villages and fields, ending at the Kubokawa River crossing, Jizo. Like the Kannon goddess of mercy, this bodhisattva was built as a type of warning sign to be careful here on the riverbank where there was no bridge. The Jizo overlooks and keeps us safe and prays for the repose of the souls of dead lost in swollen rivers. or other accidents, and to calm the entire region. Now, the old river crossing is visible here. It would have had large stepping stones, but oxen and horses would have crossed at the shoal. The Preservation Society has also kindly provided toilets for us again here on the right. Thanks to all the great volunteers who look after us on this walk and are a delight to walk with. Now, it would be remiss of me not to mention Izanagi-ryu Shinto, which is practiced only in the Monobe district. Mr. Komatsu is a devout practitioner receiving instruction from a senior Taiyu priest. Izanagi-ryu Shinto incorporates aspects of Shugendo, mountain asceticism, Mikkyo, Chinese esoteric Buddhism, Yin-yang Onmyo-do divination, and Miko Shinto, or Shrine Maiden Creed. The Taiyu uses rice and rosaries for divination, and then a bow is tapped on the altar to shift the body of deities into different objects. In doing so, the source of illness and disasters can be divined. The spirits causing those illnesses can then be expelled or appeased. Intricately cut pieces of paper called gohei and masks are used in ceremonies. The deities in the mountains of Monobe are all represented by different shaped pieces of cut-out paper. There are 500 different forms, and the Taiyo, chief priests, make the cutouts, and they are responsible for passing down the knowledge of how these cutouts are made. Taiyu perform the prayers and kagura, Shinto music and dancing, and these come in a great number of forms and are passed down again by word of mouth. Elaborate mitegura are built within which a Taiyu can seal curses and protect the villagers from mischievous deities. Masks are hidden under roofs and are only displayed in sets of 12 in ad-lib plays for deity appeasement and to ensure harmonious family relations. This was, in a way of drawing attention perhaps to domestic violence. Altars are built in homes and in the mountains, calling the gods to reside for a time at an altar where ceremonies could be conducted to thank them. Offerings of rice kept the deities in good spirits. All of this knowledge, including the prayer content, is handed down by word of mouth. Today, there are just 10 Taiyu chief priests left, 3 of whom know all of the ceremonies well. And there are just 8 disciples, including our Mr. Komatsu, who are learning the secretive ceremonies. Join me for part 2 to visit Ozu and walk along a small part of the Shikoku 88 Temples pilgrimage.